To my first art streaming virtual painting class. We're gonna dive in here in just a minute. I want to start by saying thank you for being here. I'm really glad that you chose to spend this time with me and paint and hang out and stuff. If you're new to Twitch, I know I'm new to Twitch, that's the streaming service that we're using. It is, I won't be able to hear or see you, but there is a chat screen on either the bottom or the side of your device. Bear with the gods of the internet because there's a few second delay. It has to send your message to space and all the way back down. But your messages pop up on my little screen, so I'll be able to see them and then I can respond to them. But there is a little bit of a delay before that happens. So, let's dive in. We're doing this painting right here, which is going to be lovely. For this you need red, yellow, white, and black. If you have orange, hooray. If not, don't sweat it. We're going to start by prepping our palette station. Acrylic paint, if you're not... I'm running this class with a couple of assumptions. One assumption is most of you might be beginners, maybe never have painted before. And the other assumption is that, well, there's lots of people out of work right now. Budgets are a little snug, so we're using student grade paint. We're not using anything that's particularly fancy. We're going to be painting with, kitchen sponges and all that fun jazz. So acrylic paint is a water-based paint, and so I actually like to set up my palette station as follows. I use a sheet of aluminum foil. Ta-da. I take a paper towel, place the paper towel on the aluminum foil, then I'm going to squirt it with a bunch of water. That came out a lot faster than I meant it to. Once that's done, I'm going to take a sheet of wax paper, baking kind, stuff you get in the kitchen, and put that over the wet paper towel. Now what that does, it allows a little bit of the water to permeate from underneath the wax paper, and it helps prolong the paint, the life of your paint on the palette, because once acrylic paint dries, it is a completely solid substance, and you can't just add water to it and keep working with it. This is good. It means on the canvas, it dries fairly quickly, we can work fairly quickly, but once it dries on the palette, it's toast. It's why I don't use those permanent palettes. I like the disposable palettes. That works really well. So, the first thing we're going to do with acrylic painting, at least for this style, we work in layers. We're going to do the background layers first, and then let that dry and move forward, and do the next layer and let that dry and move forward. Do the detail layers and let that dry. And because it dries really quickly, we can do this all in one fell swoop. So, I'm just going to take that down and get the new fresh canvas up there. Ta-da! You don't have to paint on a canvas. It can be a piece of wood or metal or glass or, hell, get a cardboard box. It doesn't really matter. So we're going to start with a very lovely color called cadmium red. It's a lovely, beautiful color. If you read the Facebook event, I spoke at length about making sure your paint was opaque. There's reasons for that, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But to get started, I'm going to squirt a little red on my palette. Yeah, I'll do. And I'm also going to squirt a little bit of, this is cadmium yellow. Different brand, but it's the one they had that was opaque. I got these at Michael's Craft Store, which is really kind of a fun, low-cost way to get paint. Okay, now we're going to start. If you have orange, hooray. I'm going to assume some of you don't, so we're going to run with that assumption. So we're going to start with a kitchen sponge. We're going to dip it in the red paint to get started with. I'm going to use a little bit of a generous amount so it looks kind of like that. The paint's going to be really thick. Think stiff peaks if you're making whipping cream. And we're going to use the paint. We're going to use the sponge like a brush, and we're just going to drag it across gently. Pull that across the top of the painting, just like that. I like using a sponge because it's a really efficient way of just pulling that paint across the surface of the canvas, and it gets a really good background layer really efficiently. You can use sponges for texture if you want to. I'm not going to do a whole lot of texture with this particular painting. This one does look a little pink. That's okay. Once this dries, we'll put another coat on it. Now, while this is still wet, we need to apply the yellow and the orange. If you want to mix orange on your palette, you would start with yellow and add a tiny bit of red. You always start with the lighter color first, and you add a little bit of the darker color. Never ever show the palette. Show the palette. I'm showing the palette. The palette. Yay. Okay. Sorry. It's my first time doing this. My husband's joining and giving feedback. All right. This is awkward to do because I'm in very close quarters here. Okay, so I don't actually have that ready to go. That's okay. So I'm actually going to mix orange right on the canvas because that worked really well. So I'm going to grab yellow, dipping the sponge in the yellow, and I'm just going to pull it across the bottom of the red while that's still wet. Ooh, see? That's why I don't have the palette in my hand. That's why. So what's happening is the sponge is picking up a little bit of the red and it's mixing it right in with the yellow. So we have this beautiful, nice orange. That's very lovely. Now, I like to blend my colors. You don't have to. If you want to do a more stripy style, that's completely fine. Everyone's got a unique style with their paint, and I don't think that all paintings should be the same style. So I'm going to grab more of the yellow. I think for paintings going forward, I might have a bigger canvas so I can have this back further, and I can actually show you the palette. There's like 2 feet of space between the camera and the canvas, so there's not a whole lot of room to work here. So I grabbed some more yellow and a fresh sponge, and I'm just going to grab the bottom part of the sky here and blend that color in very nicely. There we go. That's looking really good. That's looking really nice. I think I'm going to grab the orange sponge, grab a little more yellow, and we're just going to do another pass right through here. That sponge has already got some of the red, so it's going to darken just a little bit, and it's going to blend a little bit nicer. There we go. That's better. Nice part about acrylic, you can just keep going, keep layering, keep adding layers. If one part doesn't turn out perfect, cool, let it dry for a couple minutes and add more. The red, we're going to touch that up again once it completely dries. I don't know the chemistry behind why red is such a problem child. So for the mountains, we're actually going to do the mountains on another layer. What we want to do is the water. And so we need to draw our reflection line, which is going to look, I'm going to use red for just a hot minute. You never want to draw a line directly in the middle of your canvas, either horizontally or vertically, because what it does is it automatically separates out the 2 halves of your piece. And this is true whether you're painting on a canvas or designing a flyer or, I mean, whatever. But your page never wants to be divided in half. Generally, you want to think in thirds. So the edge of the lake, we want to put right about there. Alright. Also, general rule. Once acrylic paint dries, it is a completely solid substance. So you never want to use, you never want to leave paint on your brushes if you're done with them. You want to keep them in water, you want to keep them wet, because once paint dries, it can destroy your brushes, and that's sad. There's sadness there. Okay, so if this is the edge of our lake, water reflects, so we're going to basically go backwards, or in this case, I'm going to flip this guy upside down. And we're going to do the same thing in a smaller space up here. So we're going to grab our red sponge, And we're going to do just a little bit of red on the top / bottom. This one I'm actually using the edge of the sponge because this is water. Water has ripples. It's not going to be a solid color. There's going to be a little bit more interesting stuff going on there. So I'm going to have a little bit more ripples going on there, and this is going to be easier to do if you use a straight flat edge, like not the corner specifically, but an edge of your sponge. And the next I'm going to grab my orange sponge, dip it in the yellow, just along one edge, so it's just, yeah, get the hang of that. So it's just along that edge. I'm going to do it again, and that's going to pick up some of the red, so that we have a nice orange. Yellow in there and just keep right on going. Not quite done with the yellow. There we go, that's better. Okay, and then we're going to grab the lighter sponge, the yellow sponge, do it again. This yellow sponge has less of the red paint on it, so we're going to get more, there we go. We're going to get more yellow in that one. We want to make sure that the canvas is completely covered. I know I've got some missing spots over there, and that's okay. I usually go a little bit lighter handed with the paint when I'm painting. It does mean that the different layers dry very quickly, but sometimes it does leave some of the canvas viewing from underneath, which is not good. Alright, looks nice. I'm going to go back over it with the red sponge and fill in those gaps. I realize I'm working quickly. If you're not this fast, don't sweat it. We got some time. No, okay. I was gonna say that's not at all what I wanted to do, but it actually works. I like this. Okay. All right. See how much darker that is? That's just one more thin coat of red along the top. So I'm gonna flip this guy over again. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I still see canvas through the water, so I'm not done there yet. But like the top of the red here, this is already dry. So I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna do it again. I'm just gonna add some more red up there. There we go. It darkens up that sky nicely. If you don't have cadmium red, another really gold standard is a color called alizarin crimson. It's a little bit darker. It, in comparison, looks like it might have a little tiny bit of purple in it. But red, like I mentioned earlier, is a bit of a problem child when it comes to paint. So if you want a side by side though, this is alizarin crimson and this is cadmium red. It's very, very similar. It's just a tiny bit darker. The reason I'm not using this one right now is because it's not opaque, it's translucent. And when this background layer is done and ready to dry, I've got a little demo prepped as to why translucency and opacity matters. So, because I know I've gone on about that a little bit at length. Alright, so if we tilt this down a little bit so you can, so there's less glare. Yeah, there we go. That sky is nice and dark. I like that. I'm going to add a little bit of white just above the horizon line, because this is where the mountains are going to go. The mountain's going to go through here. They're going to reflect down in here. But, so that's why I didn't paint this part. This part doesn't need to be painted. But I do want to add a little bit of white paint to that yellow. I'm going to need a fourth sponge for that. For the white, opacity actually doesn't matter. You can use titanium white or zinc white. Either one will work. titanium white generally is going to be opaque, and zinc white is generally going to be translucent. But just like with life, that's not always the case. So I'm going to dip this in with a little tiny bit of yellow, because the yellow I think is completely dried, and if we want those colors to blend, it's got to be wet. And then in the same sponge, I'm going to dip it in some white. So we're getting a little bit of both. It looks like kind of a creamy mustard. And we're just going to add just a little bit of lightness to that bottom. There we go. That's just above the horizon. I'm not going to do that on the water. This is just in the sky. Once that's done, I'm going to take my yellow sponge. It has a little bit of orange in it, so I'm going to use the side, not that side. There we go, that side. And go over this part again. Just to add a little bit more yellow and smooth out that gradient just a little bit. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Best part about acrylics, just keep working. You know, if you want your colors to blend, if you want stripes, if you want waves, that's great. There's really no wrong way to do this. My goal is to show you some of the tricks that I've learned over the years, so you can have a little more confidence than I had when I started painting. I'm self-taught with acrylic painting, and Lord knows the things I have tried to do and made horrible mistakes is fascinating and lengthy. So I would like to avoid that in the future. Okay, I'm flipping it over again because there's still some canvas that I can see through here and here. So I'm going to grab the orange sponge. There it is. I'm going to grab a little bit of red and a little bit of yellow. And I'm just going to go, yep, there we go. Just a quick extra layer through here. Almost there. I can still see some red through here, so I'm going to add just a little more red. There we go. Now we're talking. Corners being a problem child. There we go. Yeah. Alright. I like that. Flip this back over. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna let that dry. And in the meantime, show you a little demo. Why does opacity matter? Why do I keep talking about it? Well, because when I first started to paint, I'd go to the craft store, or Fred Meyer in this case, and I would see these beautiful tubes of paint all hung up on the wall. We have yellows and reds and beautiful blues and purples, and you know, I'd look at those paints and be like, wow, these are gorgeous. And I'd get this idea in my head of like, oh, I want to do a painting that looks like this. And I would get a bunch of paint home and I'd throw it on the canvas and I'd stare at it and go, what? And it was very depressing. It was very upsetting. And so I later learned that acrylic paint has levels of opacity. And what that means is opaque, you're kind of seeing this already. Opaque means that you cannot see the background through the paint. It blocks all light. Translucent means you can see the background through the paint. It shines a lot of light through it. And then transparent means it blocks no light. You cannot... Now, each kind of paint has uses, plenty of uses, but it can be really challenging, especially for this style of painting, because this needs to be opaque. As you're seeing, I keep going over patches because we can see the canvas through that. And then we're going to let this dry and we're going to paint mountains over it. And what you don't want to do is paint a layer and then have your background showing through that layer. In this case, you want to, and then that's a different story. But, so what ends up happening, let me grab a brush really quick, because I did not think that through. There we go. Okay. Got a nice little flat brush here. Hopefully I didn't just get paint on myself. And a little demo canvas. Now I prepped half of this canvas as black and half of it as white. This particular canvas has seen better days, so I'm sacrificing it to the gods of the demo. This is a really good example. The cadmium yellow that I'm using is Artist Loft brand. It's opaque. How do you tell? There's a little thing right on the side, right there. It's a little square, and that says opaque right there. I don't know why it does this backwards. Not all tubes are marked, but most of them should be. If you get your paint at Michael's, Artist Loft, it depends on the brand. Artist Loft brand, they always mark their bottles. Liquitex brand, they always mark their bottles. Liquitex just rebranded, so they even have a little square on the front of it. So you don't always have to flip around to the back. But there it is on the back. But this one, this is Liquitex brand, this is cadmium yellow. This is the exact same color with two different brands. Sorry, I keep looking over here. The camera's over there. I'll get that one of these days. This is the exact same color, but with two different brands. One of them is opaque, and one of them is translucent, sorry. This one is opaque, this one is translucent. By looking at the bottle, you can't tell. I mean, these need to be marked. So this one doesn't have a square. It's got a little diagonal, you can't even see that. There it is. Well, sort of. It's not in focus. It's got a square with a diagonal line through it, and it says translucent. Now, why does this matter? Because if I squirt a little bit of the Artist Loft brand, this one, this opaque one that we're using for this painting, and I paint it on the black canvas. That's a terrible example. You're not supposed to see that. Okay, well, cool. Maybe I need more paint. That's better. There we go. That's better. You can't see the white through it. You definitely can see the black through it. So that's a very, very terrible example of what's not supposed to happen. But I'm going to wipe my brush off here and then dive into this one. This is translucent. Now if I squirt a little bit directly on the brush and do the same thing, watch what happens. It's hard to tell, but you can see more of the black through this one than you can this one. This one is showing more of the light through. Now we're going to take this one step further. Wipe my brush off. I will oftentimes have a wet paper towel just off to the side that I can wipe a brush off of and just kind of get the excess paint off of it. I have this gorgeous blue. I love this blue. This is ultramarine blue. It's beautiful. I couldn't wait to paint with it. I brought it home. I was going to paint space on a black table. Well, let me show you what happened. This paint is transparent. It does not block out one single tiny bit of light. I don't know why I'm getting a little bit of black in there. It just looks wet, right? You can't see blue at all. It just looks wet. This is transparent. Once this dries, ooh, there's a little bit of yellow in there. Sorry about that. But once this dries, you're... yeah. This is why opacity matters. Check your paint. You know, if you're painting on a black canvas, don't get transparent paint. You won't be able to see it. There you go. It just looks wet. You can't even tell that there's paint there. It's awful. Okay. Demo complete. There's lots of uses. Translucent paint, transparent paint. If you were to do this on like glass, you could paint a sun catcher and hang it in the window, and that would be gorgeous because it would look like stained glass. It would allow all the light to come through it and dazzle your kitchen or whatever with some colored light. It would look really cool. You would not want to use opaque paint on glass because it would block all of the light, unless, again, that's the effect that you're going for. So it really just kind of depends on the effect. Okay, this is dry. A little tacky, but it's dry. It's okay. So now we're going to grab black. For this one, there's like 6 different colors of black. It doesn't matter which one you use. Mars black, lamp black, ivory black. One of them is slightly warmer, one of them is slightly cooler, one of them is kind of a neutral brown base. It's black, it's opaque, it'll work. It doesn't really matter. Oh, if I haven't already mentioned it, acrylic paint dries. This is why I use a disposable palette. This is what it looks like when it dries. This is crunchy. This is not. It's well, kind of squishy actually. But you can't just add water to that and keep working with it. You have to just toss it and start over, which is why I have a wet paper towel underneath my wax paper. All right. For this part, I'm actually going to use a flat brush. Now for the flat brush, it doesn't really matter your size. This one is, I think, 3/4 of an inch. Nope, it's a 1/2 inch. Really? Okay. What matters is that it's flat and the bristles are fine bristles. These are not very coarse bristles, so these come to a really nice point. That is going to make it a lot easier to outline our mountain if your bristles come to a point. If they're kind of flayed out, like this brush has kind of seen better days, the bristles don't come to a point anymore. They're kind of, it's going to be really hard to get a nice clean edge with a brush like that. Some brushes also have coarser bristles, also going to be very difficult to get a hard, clean edge. Okay, so for the mountain, we're going to start with the top, and I go very, very light-handed on my paint with this part, so I just apply a tiny bit, like that. Like even if I go sideways, you can barely see that there's paint on there. There's just a little bit of paint, because all we need is to get the general shape of the mountain that we want to do. And this part, I mean, if you want to base it on an actual mountain, cool, grab a picture and look at reference. Or we can just kind of wing it and go, sure. So let's wing it and go, sure. Let's have a lovely mountain coming here. And I'm just kind of tapping the edge of the brush to get the general outline that we want to go. Nope, not that one. There we go. And let's have that one come there. Kind of works. This part is completely up to you. If you want to have sharp peaks or rolling hills type setup, this part is totally, you can use all of the creative expression that you want to use for this part. I have a nice little valley under here. It's going to peak up a little bit. Sure. Okay, other half. Well, side. Okay, I kind of want that to go a little bit out there, actually. Okay. Oh, that part sticks out now. Okay. Oops. Oops, it's happened. Don't worry about it. Just keep going. What does Bob Ross say? There's no accidents, just happy mistakes. Ooh. We're painting a happy mountain right now. Here we go. And he's gonna have a little bit of a peak over there. Okay. Got our mountain. Now comes this is going to be the challenging part. We have to reflect this down here because water reflects. So if this is our reflection line right here, this is our lovely line of reflection, that means that the mountain is going to come roughly right here. Now for this part, I'm going to be doing a lot of sideways motion. There's no mistakes, just happy little accidents. Haha! Yes! Okay, I did get you that one. I've only actually seen a couple of Bob Ross's videos. I need to watch more of him. Okay, so for this part, I'm going to be doing the feathering. Let me grab the original. Okay. What I'm doing is this part right here. The feathering of the mountain. This is the part that reflects on the water. This one's much messier than I meant it to be, but that's okay, it's a learning process. So I'm going to be doing a lot of sideways back and forth motions with the flat edge of the brush, and that gives lovely, lovely little feathery water ripple type looks. So we basically want to mirror this on top of the water. So this peaks a little bit, this is a little bit flat, this part's hard, just try to go with it. This is the highest part of the peak, so this is going to be the lowest part down here. And then in general, just kind of comes over here. There we go. And then, it's hard to kind of see that from an angle, but I'm barely touching the canvas right now. Just barely touching the canvas. Because this is mainly just kind of getting a general outline of what that mountain shape is going to look like. And then once that's done, I'm going to get a little more brush on the paint, and a little more paint on the brush. There we go. You can see it. Nice glob. We're going to black this in. This is Silhouette. That's why we don't paint this middle part here. It's just going to get painted right over. And this is why it's really, really important to have a nice flat brush that comes to a nice peak, a nice stiff point, because it's going to make painting the mountain much, much easier. You can do this part with a sponge if you want to. The sponge is good about pulling across the paint very efficiently, very quickly, but you have a little bit less control over your edging with a sponge. It's better for general background colors. So for these mountains, I'm going to use a brush. Why I love silhouette painting so much, but it is actually a lot of fun. Alright, I'm just going to keep going. Remember, mountains, you know, they're not straight up and down, they've got character. Give them, words are happening. Give them some character. Make sure that, you know, that they've got personality. Give them peaks and valleys. Give them, you know, something going on. Think about why they formed that way, if you want it. If you want to add trees to yours, you're welcome to do that. I haven't quite mastered the art of getting a good tree silhouette. It just looks weird when I do it. So I won't be doing that today, but hopefully soon. Done with this video, probably tomorrow. I'm going to pull it off of Twitch and post it onto YouTube, so it will be available. I know there are some folks coming today that are going to be late to the party. Some folks weren't able to make it. So if you're late to the party or you have to leave early unexpectedly and you still want to finish this painting, it's going to be up on YouTube. You're going to be able to do that. There will be less banter, although my husband's the only one actually chatting right now. Hi, husband. But these will be available for you whenever you want to. So, you know, if you had fun, send it to a friend and be like, hey, learn how to paint. There you go. Earlier this year, I had done a series of paintings, maybe five or six paintings. And the first painting class was scheduled for late March, which was obviously fantastic timing. So I am planning on doing more of these. And I'm really excited about it. If there's enough interest, I might do one that's specifically on color theory. It's how to mix paint. I know I wasn't able to really show you on the palette today. but it's how to mix paint. It's what colors go well together, what colors don't go well together. You know, how we're kind of mixing colors on the canvas directly. You know, there are rules. There are colors that this won't work with. If you tried this with certain colors, it would be a catastrophe. You know, what does it mean when I say pigment? What does it mean to desaturate a hue? What does it mean when I say this is a warmer color or a cooler color? That's all color theory. So if there's enough interest, I might do a class that's specifically color theory. It would be less hands-on of like, we're doing a painting today, and a little bit more just kind of, you know, demos of here's what happens when you mix these two colors together and you know, get a catastrophe. Okay, we're almost done with these mountains. Here we go. Once these mountains are done, we're going to let them dry for just a little bit, and then we're going to paint some soft highlights in the water with the white, maybe some yellow, but I think I've already accomplished most of that, and then we'll do the birds in the sky and call it a day. I do have some really fun paintings that are in the pipeline that I'm really excited about. You can kind of see one of them right there. That one is well, it was scheduled for April. That was April's painting. It was a rainy season with an umbrella. But it's not April anymore, so I don't know if it's going to be super appropriate to do. I don't know, appropriate, whatever. We're in Portland, it's still raining. So I might do that one still. I don't know. I have a really fun space one. I have a really fun, similar to this one. It's got sky, silhouette, lake, but it's blues instead of reds, and it's got, the strokes are circular. So it looks more like an extended photo of a night sky. That one, I'm really proud of that one, but I want to, I don't know, debating on that one. And then we've got space. I've been painting a lot of space lately, which is really fun. I really enjoy it. Alright, blocking technique. Ooh, I can still see canvas through there. Eee, ah! Okay, this mountain just grew a little bit. That's okay. One of the techniques I use for blackout like this is just to very, very gently sweep the brush back and forth like this. I'm not bending the bristles more than like maybe that much. I like my brushes. I want them to be in good shape. So I just go very, very gently. It's also why I'm not very heavy-handed on the paint, which is probably why I have to keep going back and touching bits up. It's hard to do. It's glaring from this angle, but it was kind of the best angle to do this at. Alright. And then we have, we're almost ready for the hard part. The water is going to be the hardest part. Water is no joke. It's difficult to do. So we're not going to do a solid line down here. The edges are going to be feathered. So we're going to black out until we get closer to the base, or the edge of the mountains, not the base. Okay. Alright. Time for trick number 542. The bristles are starting to flare outwards. I don't know if you can see that. So what we're going to do is we're going to, just how I was pulling the paintbrush gently back and forth across the canvas, we're going to do that gently across a wet paper towel. Because what that's going to do is help, if I can get to my paper towel, 1 second. There we go. It's going to help kind of wipe off some of the excess paint and reform the bristles into a nice point. There we go. Nice and sharp, like I like it. Alright, back at it. The reason why we want a sharp point is because, I don't know if you can see this right here, but that's not a very sharp feather. That's a very kind of a broad stroke, and I want these feathers to be nice and small. So I'm going flat side in, and then just sweeping back and forth. And we're going to get a nice water ripple effect that way. And then as we get closer, then we will go back and darken the actual mountain reflection. The edges of this painting, the edges of the mountain reflection are the hardest part of this painting. So if you're struggling with this, that's okay. I'm struggling with it too. Kind of experimenting, throwing a little extra black in there. Dried. Okay. Remember my translucence test? Look at that. You can't even see the blue. Right there. It's supposed to be blue. Just looks black. Nope. Okay, if you get paint on your hands, congratulations, you're a painter. That's what opaque paint is supposed to do. See how there's red in the background? We're painting over it, you can't tell there's red. It's awesome. Gently filling that in. There we go. Yes! That's what I want. There we go. That's the effect I want right there. It's nice and soft. That's what water reflection looks like. The edges are soft, but it's a general reflection of what you're seeing above it. Another way you can keep your bristles nice and smooth is to, I need to actually get this, I haven't done it before, but there's brush conditioner, which keeps your bristles in really good shape and prevents that from happening. I did not use brush conditioner with this brush, and so it's starting to look like it's seen better days. Alright. This is coming along. So as I'm getting close to the edge of the mountain reflection, I'm switching back and forth between using the flat edge of the brush this way and using the flat edge of the brush this way. Oh, thank you. Hello, Amanda. Amanda is a dear friend from college that has been heavily encouraging me to do art streaming for many moons. She has her own streaming channel. She does some amazing stuff and has been teaching me the art of the art, that too, but the ways of the stream. Alright, we're just going to feather the edges just a little bit more through here. Pesky. This is starting to dry, so it's not behaving very well. And I tend not to go too heavy-handed on my paint. I tend to be very light-handed. So we're almost there. We actually have just one more. Ooh, that was almost bad. That was a big old blob of paint that almost That was almost a catastrophe. All right. Well, I have a very happy accident. All right. Oh, I like that. I like that. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. I'm gonna pull this over a little bit so you can see the other edge. I think next time I do one of these, I'm gonna use a bigger canvas so I can actually be a little bit further away and have a little more room to work. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Oh, we're getting there. Okay, all right. It's almost there. Okay. All right. Take a peek at it from a different angle to make sure that there's no canvas showing through. There actually is some canvas showing through in a couple of spots. I'm gonna touch those up real quick. Yeah. I'm picky with the edges of my mountains. I want them to be nice and crisp. Yep. Just a few spots down here. Yes, that'll do. I like that. All right. All right. Now, I need to get a water cup because the one thing I didn't actually do is get a water cup. Be right back. Okay. Sorry about that. It's very important. Wash your brushes. Just take some water, gently swirl it around in there. Get the excess paint off. You can wipe it off with a wet paper towel, wet Kleenex. You just want to make sure to keep that brush wet, keep the paint wet. If it dries on your brush, it can really damage your bristles because it's really hard to get off of there. Ditto for your sponges. Sponges I'm less concerned about because they're kitchen sponges from Winco. They're like $1.50 each and you cut them into 8 pieces, so. Okay. I'll let that soak. We're gonna do I'll take a small round brush. It can be round or flat, doesn't really matter. And I'm gonna use the white and a tiny bit of yellow. We're gonna do some real soft highlights. Real soft highlights, just real gentle. I'm barely touching the canvas. wipe that down on an extra paper towel. I'm going to do that again with just the yellow. And maybe a tiny bit of red, but just mostly the yellow. I'm putting both colors on the same brush, not really mixing them, just kind of, I want the texture. There we go. Ooh, that's fun. Let's see that very well. Prop that up. Yeah, that's masking tape. I don't like getting paint all over my easels, so I try to coat them with something. Just kind of painting a little bit more of that water ripple effect. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do is add birds. Same brush, a little bit of black. And I'm going to paint birds like my mama taught me, which are V-shaped, or more like they look like open books in the sky. My birds are going to be over here this time. Or actually it kind of looks like a curly bracket. And we're done. Ta-da! Painting! 53 minutes. Not that it was a speed job. Okay. Sign this puppy. We're good to go. I'm going to sign it with a Sharpie. I'm actually not really accustomed to signing a painting with paint. I know that sounds weird, but... okay, that's a basic painting. It's glaring. There we go. That's better. This is a basic painting. Anybody can do this. It looks intimidating. It's really not. It's really not. If you have a desire to paint, you gotta start somewhere, and this is a great place to start. I'll be adding more of these soon. Check Geek Girl Stuff's Facebook page. That's where I'm going to be posting the information about the classes, dates, times, what we're going to be doing, etc. And I'm keeping these free. If you're welcome to donate if you are able and willing. And if you have any requests, let me know. I am very tempted to do some watercolor. I'm still kind of experimenting with what all I want to do. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. This was lovely. I hope you are coping well. I hope you're staying healthy and safe. And we love you very much, and we will see you next time.